Nice and smooth.
No?
Good results. All the people show more interest.
The climb he's had has just been quite staggering.
Just learning so rapidly.
So good.
He's the youngest top 50 player since Rafa Nadal in 2004.
The Australian Open men's singles champion for 2026, Carlos Alcaraz.
Recently, and the players themselves cannot stop talking about it. In early 2026, following Alcaraz's dominant Australian Open campaign, a quietly terrifying truth began surfacing in post-match press conferences. Opponents stopped giving diplomatic, politically safe answers. Jannik Sinner, the current world number one, flat out admitted that Carlos carries virtually no weaknesses. That is not a compliment you hand out casually when you are sitting at the top of the rankings yourself. But here is what makes this genuinely fascinating. It was not just Sinner. Across locker rooms, interview chairs, and courtside conversations, the word feared kept emerging. Not respected, not admired, feared. Go back to 2023 when Novak Djokovic, a man who spent 2 decades being the most feared player on tour himself, looked across the net at Alcaraz and essentially said, "This kid plays like all 3 of us combined." That assessment has aged with remarkable accuracy. The tennis rivals have finally admitted what millions of fans already knew. Alcaraz is now the most feared player in tennis, full stop. If you want the full breakdown of exactly how this happened, subscribe so you never miss an episode. Let's get into it. The clearest starting point for this evidence trail is not a press conference. It is a specific moment during the 2022 US Open that people inside the tour still reference when this conversation comes up. Alcaraz had just come through a brutal semifinal against Francis Tiafoe that stretched past midnight at Arthur Ashe Stadium. A match so physically demanding that most players would have needed days to recover. Less than 48 hours later, he was back on the same court against Casper Ruud in the final. He won 6-4, 2-6, 7-5, 6-3 in 4 sets. What struck rivals watching was not the victory itself, it was the complete absence of visible fatigue or tactical retreat from someone who had every reason to be running on empty. That observation spread through the locker room faster than the trophy presentation did. The game being assembled, explosive short ball aggression, a drop shot disguised until the last possible moment, defensive retrieval speed that punished opponents for attempting winners, did not fit the conventional mold of a baseline grinder or a serve and volley specialist. It was genuinely hybrid, and hybrid games are notoriously difficult to prepare against because they do not surrender a single tactical identity to exploit. What followed was a rapid, surface-by-surface dismantling of every argument rivals were using to manage their confidence heading into matches against him. Wimbledon 2023 eliminated the grass court safe space. Roland Garros 2024 eliminated the clay court safe space. A second consecutive Wimbledon in 2024 confirmed the first was no accident. Every time a rival thought, at least on this surface he is beatable, Alcaraz went and won a title there. That pattern, not any single result, is what shifted the internal conversation inside the ATP Tour, from respect into something closer to genuine concern. The moment that gave this conversation its real public weight was Djokovic's specific assessment during the 2023 Wimbledon fortnight. He observed that Alcaraz had constructed a game absorbing qualities from all 3 members of the Big Three: the defensive positioning and endurance of Djokovic himself, the relentless clay court aggression associated with Nadal, and the all-court shot-making elegance that characterized Federer's game. Understanding the full weight of that statement requires context about who delivered it. Djokovic is the most calculating, strategically intelligent competitor in modern tennis. He understands what it means to have an opponent already mentally compromised before the first ball is struck. His assessment was not generous praise offered to a promising youngster. It was a clinical evaluation from someone who had just lost a Wimbledon final and was explaining precisely why it happened. Alcaraz defeated Djokovic in 5 sets that day, ending his consecutive title run on a surface Djokovic had made his own. The manner in which he won, dictating terms on grass against the most dominant grass court player of his generation, became an immediate reference point for the generational transfer conversation that has only accelerated since. By mid-2024, Alcaraz had added Roland Garros and a second consecutive Wimbledon to his collection. 4 Grand Slams across 3 different surfaces, hard courts, clay, and grass, before his mid-20s. That surface diversity matters enormously here because it eliminates the coping mechanism rivals rely on most. In professional tennis, players find psychological comfort in surface limitations. A clay specialist becomes less threatening on grass. A grass expert becomes beatable on hard courts. The mental framework of just get him on the right surface is legitimate at the elite level. Alcaraz has removed every version of that comfort available. Every surface is now a potential problem. That reality sits permanently in the back of every opponent's mind during preparation, and it fundamentally changes the psychological dimension of competing against him. The Grand Slam collection continued to grow through 2025 and into 2026, with the Australian Open campaign representing the latest chapter in an already historically significant body of work. Former tour professionals who faced multiple generations of elite players have described Alcaraz's combination of speed, power, and tennis IQ as unlike anything they encountered throughout their careers. That is not a sentiment professionals express casually about a contemporary still in his early 20s. But perhaps no voice in this conversation carries more weight than the man currently sitting across from Alcaraz at the very top of the rankings. The Jannik Sinner dimension of this story is particularly compelling because of the competitive context surrounding it. Sinner holds the world #1 ranking heading into 2026, separated from Alcaraz by approximately 550 ranking points, an extraordinarily tight margin. He has won multiple Grand Slams himself and is not a player who speaks without precision or conviction, which makes his admission about Alcaraz carrying virtually no exploitable weaknesses all the more significant. That statement was not delivered from a position of defeat or frustration. Sinner has beaten Alcaraz in high-profile matches, including the 2025 Wimbledon final. He understands his opponent's game at an intimate tactical level. His acknowledgement of Alcaraz's near-complete game is therefore a cold, data-driven assessment from someone with first-hand competitive experience, not a narrative constructed from outside the locker room. Their 2025 French Open final, won by Alcaraz, and the 2025 Wimbledon final, won by Sinner, demonstrated what happens when two elite players push each other beyond conventional tennis strategy. Both have publicly stated their desire for this rivalry to become historically significant. That mutual acknowledgement is telling. Both players recognize the other makes them better. But within that respect, Sinner's specific language about the absence of weaknesses reveals something more than admiration. It is the kind of honest assessment that only surfaces when a rival has run out of tactical comfort to hide behind. Beyond Djokovic and Sinner, the broader ATP field has been navigating the psychological reality of this era with varying degrees of success. Multiple players ranked inside the top 30 have discussed preparation for facing Alcaraz in terms that go beyond standard match analysis. The obsessive study of patterns, the tactical adjustments in training blocks, the psychological preparation required, it reflects a level of pre-match investment typically reserved for opponents who have already beaten them. Repeatedly, the fact that this is now standard procedure for any player expecting to face Alcaraz in a tournament's latter stages reveals the mental footprint he carries across an entire draw. There is a specific phenomenon in elite sport where one competitor becomes so dominant that opponents begin making errors before competition starts. The cognitive load of anticipating Alcaraz's varied attacking options, the drop shot from anywhere on the court, the cross-court forehand, the defensive retrieval speed that converts finished points into reversals, compounds gradually throughout a match. Opponents make uncharacteristic errors at critical moments. Those errors are rarely random. They trace back to a decision-making process disrupted by the awareness that any neutral ball against Alcaraz becomes an opportunity for him to shift the entire point. Rafael Nadal, who played his final match at the Davis Cup Finals in November 2024, acknowledged Alcaraz's passion-driven, competitive approach as reminiscent of his own intensity on court, delivered through a more technically complete overall game. From a man who spent 2 decades as the most feared competitor on clay in tennis history, that observation carries considerable weight. Professional athletes do not voluntarily advertise their fears. Admitting that a specific opponent frightens you creates a psychological dynamic that can be immediately exploited, signaling to coaching teams, journalists, and the opponent himself that a mental advantage already exists before competition begins. The standard procedure is to give respectful, carefully worded answers that acknowledge quality without conceding psychological ground. The fact that rivals have reached a point where maintaining that diplomatic front is no longer sustainable, where honesty outweighs the strategic cost of admission, tells you everything about the magnitude of what Alcaraz has built. At 22, he has created a reputation so formidable that even tactically intelligent professional competitors cannot maintain the performance of indifference. That is not where most careers are at 22. That is where careers arrive after a decade of sustained dominance, if they arrive there at all. Alcaraz has compressed that timeline in a way the sport has not witnessed before, and the rivals who step across the net from him are now openly confirming it. The most feared player in tennis is not a media construction. It is a verdict delivered by the people best positioned to issue it. The professionals who study his patterns obsessively, compete against him directly, and then sit in front of microphones trying to explain what just happened. The conversation around Carlos Alcaraz is nowhere near finished. As the 2026 season continues to unfold, every tournament he enters carries fresh weight. For fans watching, and most significantly, for rivals stepping onto the court against him. The admissions happening now inside the ATP Tour are just the beginning of a much larger story. If this breakdown gave you a perspective you had not fully considered before, this channel is where you need to be. Subscribe right now and turn on notifications, because the next chapter of the Alcaraz era is moving fast and you do not want to find out what happened from someone else's highlight reel. Do you think any player on the current tour has a genuine answer for what Alcaraz brings? Drop it in the comments below.